our minds and make us all think. How's everyone doing? It's good to be here. It doesn't matter what time it is that you've come along. So if it's morning, grand risings. If it's afternoon, grand afternoon. If it's evening, grand evening. Doesn't matter. Thing is that it's important because you came here because you were ready for this. Your inner being, that internal divine, the real original blueprint of our designs, was calling out and letting you know that you needed to pay attention because this world has a war out for our attention. You know, we're living in a world that is designed to distract us crazy, like insanely. And not just distract us from the light ways. I mean, not just distract us for a moment either, but to pull our attention into every direction possibly known to man for a moment, but to pull our attention, our emotions, and our nervous systems and our identity outward over and over and over again until we forget what it feels like to even be centered. You worried about the war going on over there? There is a war that's been going on around us all this time. And even that war is nothing more but an added distraction to the war that we already have and have been in. See, we've been surrounded by noise for so long that silence can feel strange. We have been fed fear for so long that peace can feel unfamiliar. We have been trained to react for so long that stillness can almost feel uncomfortable. I don't even think this world even really knows what peace really is. But I want to say this clearly. Fear is not the divine within. Fear is not the essence of truth. Fear is not the language of the soul. See, fear belongs to distortion, and fear belongs to confusion, and fear belongs to a system that wants the mind spinning in all directions so it never fully settles into presence. And that is why this teaching really matters so much. And what I've got to say is important. Because if we do not understand how the world is designed to move us emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, then we can spend our whole lives reacting to the surface while never touching the source. See, this world, do you want to know what this world is constantly giving us reasons to actually be afraid, to even move around, to breathe, to clear the air. We see it in the news every day. We see it on the television mounted on the walls and our phones that are in our hands constantly, and we see it in the schools. How's it going? We even see it in churches. We see it in the grocery store, and we see it in the workplace, and we see it in social media, and we see it in conversation. We see it in a way people speak to each other. We see it in a way that people look at each other even. I mean, we see it in ways people are taught to divide themselves by opinions, by identity, by politics, by class, by religion, by race, by lifestyle, by belief. And if you are not even paying attention, you can believe that this is just how life is. But I don't believe that's true. And it took me going into nature to even discover that. It took silence. It took going into the inner kingdom. It took hearing the being to understand this. See, I believe this world has been structured into a way that repeatedly stirs motions in the mind. It drives and does a targeted distraction. Motion in the mind becomes motion in the body, you see. And motion in the body becomes motion in the emotions. Emotions in the emotions becomes motions in the identity. And once the identity is constantly moving, well, the person forgets who to remain still even long enough to hear the deeper truth of who they are. And that's how we forget the divine within us. See, that is the trap. Not because every detail is controlled by one hand, but because the entire environment is set up to reward fear, reward reaction, reward comparison, reward consumption, and reward division. I mean, look at schools. I mean, from a very young age, many of us are taught that authority is external. I mean, look at right here. We got examples right there. We're taught to judge, taught to make assumptions. We're taught that authority is an external thing. You know, that bell tells you when to move. The schedule tells you when to think. And the grade tells you whether you are acceptable. See, the report card tells you whether you are enough. The structure teaches compliance, but not always self-awareness. It teaches memorization, but not always understanding. See, it teaches performance, but not always presence. And because of that, many people grow up learning to live in evaluation. We learned it in our schools. We learned it in our churches. They learn to scan for approval. They learn to fear mistakes even, and they learn to associate failure with shame. And they learn to suppress their own rhythm in order to fit into the rhythm of the system. And that is a form of fear training. You know? Not always intentionally cruel, but deeply conditioning. And then we move into media. Let's look at this media world. And the same patterns, they continue right there. I mean, the television on the wall keeps feeding us conflict, but so does the media in our hands, the phones. The news cycles keeps feeding us urgencies, the dings, the dongs, the how many people responded to our posts. The feed keeps us outraged. The algorithm keeps feeding us whatever gets the strongest reactions from people, the most ticks, the most dings, you know. And what gets the strongest reaction? Well, fear, threat, division, scandal, panic, comparison, outrage. See, the nervous system is constantly being pulled into alertness. How's it going? And when the nervous system lives in alertness long enough, calm starts to feel unsafe. Stillness starts to feel empty. Quiet starts to feel suspicious. Reflection starts to feel heavy. And a mind that has been trained on noise will resist silence at first. But silence is where the truth begins to surface. See, silence is where the soul can finally be heard. Silence is where we stop performing and start perceiving. See, silence is where the inner kingdom becomes visible. I mean, even in the grocery store can become part of this system. I mean, think about it. The bright lights, the endless aisles, the rushing music, the carts moving, the people scanning. The people grabbing, the people in the line looking at their phones, the people already thinking about the next task before the current task is even finished. See, it is a place of consumption, but it is also a mirror of the larger culture. Grab more, move faster, stay busy, stay external orientated, in motion, stay occupied, stay disconnected from the deeper self. See, even commonplaces can train our nervous system into fragmentation. And then people wonder why they cannot rest, why they don't know how to be still, and why if someone being still is considered, the world would call, oh, they're being lazy. No. Why they can't concentrate, why they cannot hear themselves, why they feel fragmented even in a quiet room. Because if the mind has been trained to live externally, then even stillness can feel foreign now, can't it? And then there is the division. Division is one of the most powerful tools of distraction. If you can keep people divided, you can keep them from looking inward now, can't you? And if you can keep people identifying with the group, you can keep them from identifying with consciousness. And if you can keep people fighting over labels, you can keep them from asking deeper questions. And if you can keep people from seeing enemies everywhere, you can keep them from seeing the system that feeds on the conflict. We are divided politically. We're divided religiously. We are divided culturally. We are divided racially, and we are divided economically. We are divided ideologically. We're divided by fear. And we are divided by assumptions. And we are divided by the stories we are told about each other. And the more divided we are, the more easily distracted we become. Because when you are always looking at them, you do not look at yourself. When you are always defending a side, you do not examine your own mind. And when you are always reacting to the other, you do not enter the inner kingdom. You're welcome. And that is why it is important. That's what I'm teaching right now. Because the answer is not to win every other outer battle. The answer is to awaken to what the outer battles are doing to the inner world. In my book, I write about the shadow matrix. Yo, Francis. And I use the language because the world can become a system of illusions, fear, separation, and conditioning when we forget how to look within. See, the shadow matrix keeps people focused on appearance, validation, scarcity, threat, and external identity. It keeps people chasing what is outside while ignoring what is inside. And it keeps people looking at the mirror instead of the source. And this is where we have to get very honest. A lot of us have been trying to heal the inside by rearranging the outside. See, we think if people change, we will be okay. We think if the system changes, we'll be okay. We think that if the relationship changes, we'll be okay. We think that if the job changes, we'll be okay. And we think that if the city changes, we'll be okay. And we think that if the house changes, we'll be okay. And we think that if the body changes, we'll be okay. But we think if the world changes, we'll be okay. But true healing does not begin there. True healing begins when we realize that the world around us is not the source of our peace. See, my body's been going through major chaos. Like, to a point, it's insanity, and even the medical system doesn't know what to do. But peace. Because true healing comes when we realize that the world around us and what's going on outside of us is not the source of our peace. It's not what grounds us. It can either disturb peace or reflect peace, but it is not the source. The source is within. It doesn't matter what this external is doing. The universe is not hunting us. See, the universe is not even attacking us. The universe is not punishing us. The universe is neutral and reflective, and it mirrors back what we are carrying deep within. And if we carry fear, we tend to encounter fear. But if we carry distrust, we tend to encounter distrust. And if we carry anger, we tend to encounter anger. And if we carry expectations of betrayal, we often find ourselves in patterns of betrayal. And that does not mean the world is fake in a simple sense. It means the outer life is often responding to the life more within than we even realize. And that is why expectations matter, why your beliefs matter, why your identity matters, why attention matters, because the universe will reflect the hidden language of the heart. What's inside is what matters, not the outside. And I write about this in my book. We are meant to return to the original design, the divine within. And the design is not chaos. It is not fear, it is not division, it is not constant reaction. It is coherence. It is love. It is clarity. It is a state of being that does not need to attack in order to feel safe. And that is the divine within. That is the light. That is the peace. That is the part of us that is untouched by the storm. Now let's bring this into real life. Now imagine a child in school being taught that every mistake matters more than the learning. Imagine that child learning to perform for approval instead of listening to their own inner rhythm. Imagine that child carrying shame because the grade, because more important than the growth. And that child became an adult who may still live under this invisible pressure, and they may become a person who fears being seen, and they may become a person who fears failure, and they may become a person who cannot sit still because stillness forces them to feel the old anxiety they never resolved. And that's just one story. Now imagine someone who spends hours every day consuming fear through the media. They wake up to the news. They check their phone. They hear their conflict. They hear the division. And they hear about threat. They hear about chaos, and their body is trained to be braced. Their jaw tightens. Their chest tightens. Their thoughts become agitated. They feel informed, but they are really overloaded. They feel aware, but they are really inflamed. And that is another story. Now imagine a person going into a grocery store after living in a constant state of stress. The bright lights feel harsh. The people feel rushed. The line feels irritating, and the delay feels unbearable. And all of the external pressure is not just about the store. It is a state of the nervous system being mirrored back. The internal world of external world are in conversation, and often the outer world is simply revealing what has already been stored inside. And that is why so many of us need the inner work. Not because the world is not real, but because the world is always revealing the inner state. Now let us talk about division more deeply. See, division doesn't only happen on large scales. It happens in ordinary life. It happens when we compare ourselves to others. And it happens when we decide somebody's story is more valid than another. And it happens when we reduce another human being into a category. It happens when we stop seeing souls and start seeing symbols. It happens when we become loyal to an identity more than we are loyal to truth. It happens when we need someone else to be wrong so that we can feel right. And that is why the world keeps people in argument. Because arguments keeps attention externally, and if people are arguing, they are not reflecting. If people are reacting, they are not observing. If people are defending, they are not listening. If people are in fear, they are not in peace. And this is the deeper pattern. Fear creates motion. Motion creates distraction. Distraction creates separation. Separation creates vulnerability to control. That is why fear is such a powerful tool. But again, fear is never the divine within. See, fear is just a distortion. Fear is the opposite of the still knowing that lives inside the soul. You know, I remember a season in my own life. You know, when I could feel how much external noise was trying to get into my mind. And there were moments when it felt like everything around me was asking for a reaction. There were conversations, accusations, expectations, judgment, and pressure coming from all sides. And what I learned in those moments was that if I tried to fight every noise, I would lose my center. But if I returned inward, I could feel the ground beneath me again. It's taken me years to get to this place. It wasn't just overnight. It was many years within the wilderness, a literal wilderness, a desert at that. See, that is what stillness does. It does not erase the storm, but it gives you the place inside yourself that the storm cannot own. See, I learned that I did not need to scratch the mirror anymore. I did not need to attack the reflection. And I did not need to see more clearly what was being reflected. I needed to pay attention to the inner kingdom within and see what was reflecting into the world outside. Because the universe is not out there plotting against us. It is a reflection of our deepest orientation. And if we believe we are unsafe, we will live as though we are under siege and constant stress. If we believe we are not enough, we will live as though we must prove ourselves constantly and become people pleasers. If we believe we are always being watched, judged, or attacked, then every environment starts to feel hostile. But when we change the identity within, the mirror changes. And that's not a fantasy. That is the lived reality of inner transformation. That is why psychology and spirituality meet right here. Because the mind is not just a thinker. It projects. It projects meaning. It projects expectations, and it projects interpretations. It projects fear. It projects memory. It projects identity. And so if the projector is full of pain, the image will be painful. If the projection is full of fear, the image will be fearful. If the projection is full of blame, the image will be blame-filled, and have fingers pointing everywhere. If the projection is full of love, patience, and clarity, then the image begins to soften. This is why practice matters. This is why meditation matters. This is why prayer matters. This is why observation matters. This is why nature matters. When you sit by the ocean, you do not hear the ocean asking for performance. When you stand under a tree, you do not hear the tree asking for approval. When you walk through the desert, you do not see the sand competing. Nature does not compete to exist. Nature simply is. And perhaps that is what we need to remember most. We do not need to become something to deserve being. We do not need to accumulate external proof to become whole. We do not need to be louder than everyone else to be true. We need to return to the still essence that was always there. The problem is not that we are lacking peace. The problem is that we keep surrendering our attention to what steals peace. We keep handing our mind to fear. We keep handing our focus to division. We keep handing our energy to noise. And we keep handing our identity to the outside world. And then we ask why the inner kingdom feels so far away. It is not far away. It is covered by motion, covered by fear, covered by conditioning, covered by the habits of distraction. But it can be uncovered. And the uncovering begins with awareness. Notice the fear. Notice the division. Notice the urge to react, and notice the impulse to compare, and notice the inner tightening, and notice the external pull. Notice the way the world tries to keep you busy enough that you never sit with yourself. And then instead of obeying it, immediately pause. Breathe, return. See, this is not a small thing. This is how the kingdom within becomes accessible again. Because when you are still, you can actually hear what your own mind has been trying to tell you. You can hear what your body has been holding. You can hear what your spirit already knows. You can hear what fear has been disguising. And you can hear what truth has been waiting to reveal. Let's talk about schools for a moment. A child is not just learning math and reading. A child is learning what authority feels like. A child is learning what safety feels like. A child is learning what belonging feels like. And a child is learning whether their question matters. And a child is learning whether their voice matters. A child is learning whether their natural rhythm matters. And if that system constantly rewards compliance over awareness, the person may grow into adulthood seeking permission to be themselves. That is why so many of us adults struggle to identify what they actually want. They've spent their whole life adapting. They've spent their whole life responding. They've spent their whole life fitting in. They've spent their whole life being told what matters. And when it is finally quiet enough, they do not know how to hear their own truth. That is not failure. That is the result of conditioning. But the good news is conditioning can be healed. It can be unlearned. It can be interrupted, and it can be transformed, but it takes courage. It takes honesty. It takes willingness to stop blaming only the outside world and to begin to sacred work within. And this is where we stop romanticizing healing and start respecting it. Healing is not always gentle, by the way. Sometimes healing is brutal because it removes all the lies we've believed. And now we're stuck with the truth of reality. At the end of the day, there's only one finger pointing. Right here. Sometimes healing is so brutal because it exposes the way we have been living unconsciously. And sometimes healing is brutal because it asks us to stop outsourcing our peace. And sometimes healing is brutal because it asks us to become the essence of wisdom before we ask for peace to become near us. And that does matter, because the essence of wisdom is do not just speak about it, is do not just admire it, is do not just repeat it, because become it. Because peace will not stay where chaos is worshipped. Peace will not stay where fear is fed, and peace will not stay where division is chosen over unity. Peace will not stay where reaction is the default. And peace comes where coherence is practiced. Peace comes where the mind learns to sit. And peace comes where the body learns to breathe. And peace comes where the spirit learns to trust. Peace comes where the inner kingdom is honored above outer noise. And this is why the same world that tries to distract you can always become your classroom. Yeah, I'm not even going to pay attention to that. Every fear can become a mirror. And that's fear. And see, where religion and man go and produce fear, I don't step near that. Because that is not the kingdom. See, every fear can become a mirror. Every trigger can become a teacher. And every argument can become an invitation to witness yourself. Every moment of chaos can become an opportunity to return. Every environment that tries to pull you outward, can remind you to go inward. That is how the system loses power. Not by fighting every symbol, not by fighting every comment, not by trying to defeat every voice, but by refusing to give your inner kingdom away. And you can walk through the grocery store and remain in your inner peace. You can watch the television and remain discerning. You can move through the school system and remain aware. You can sit on a live network and move through comments and not even budge. And you can live among divided people and remain rooted in unity. And you can hear the noise and still not become the noise. You can witness fear and still not become fear. And you can see chaos and still not become chaos. That is mastery. That is freedom. That is the kind of power that the world cannot easily manipulate. And I want to end with this, is return to the deepest truth. The universe is not punishing you. The universe is not hunting you. The universe is not against you. The universe is reflecting you. It is, so if you want to change what is going on around you, begin by changing what is within you. If you want to experience more peace, become peace. If you want more clarity, cultivate clarity. And if you want more love, become more love. If you want less fear, stop feeding fear. And if you want less division, stop making separation your identity. If you want more truth, become more honest with yourself. And if you want the world to become less chaotic, begin by refusing to let chaos occupy your mind. That is where the world begins. Within, always within. Because the real world is not the outer performance. The real world is the inner kingdom. And when you finally enter that kingdom, you discover that you were never truly without peace. You were only trained to look away from it. So let us remember this. Let us return. Let us watch the fear without becoming it. Let us see the division without feeding it. Let us observe the system without surrendering it. And let us reclaim the mind. Let us reclaim the breath. Let us reclaim the center of our being. Let us return to the divine within that has no need for fear, no need for chaos, no need for division. Revelation was about revealing what was within, the kingdom within. Now let us become still enough to hear what has always been speaking. And let us walk forward from that place. Because that's what's really important. Anyways, peace and love. You might want to go start your own channel. All right, goodbye.